Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Chris Dost. Welcome back to our series on the textual analysis of the Hebrew Bible, and it's Masorah. If you haven't subscribed already, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and encourage your friends to do so as well. I also encourage you to click the bell below so that you will be notified when I publish videos like this one in the future. And please be sure to share this video on social media so that we can get the word out about this series. All right, let's get started, everybody. Hey everybody, welcome back to our series on the textual analysis of the book of Amos. So we're looking here at the text as presented in Biblia Hebraica Quinta, and today our focus is going to be Amos chapter 1 and verse 5. So let's read the text in Hebrew, and then we'll get to the analysis. All right, so we begin. V'shavarti b'riach damesek, v'hechrati yoshev mibikat aven, v'tomech shevet mibeit eden. V'galu am aram kira, amar Adonai. V'shavarti b'riach damesek, v'hechrati yoshev mibikat aven, v'tomech shevet mibeit eden, v'galu am aram kira, amar Adonai. Now slowly. V'shavarti b'riach damesek, v'hechrati yoshev mibikat aven, v'tomech shevet mebeit Eden, v'galu am aram kira, amar Adonai. And one more time fast. V'shavarti b'riach damesek, v'hechrati yoshev mebikat aven, v'tomech shevet mebeit Eden, v'galu am aram kira, amar Adonai. So the first word, v'shavarti, means and I will break. This is the suffix conjugation, which would normally be shavarti with the stress on the stress over the beit. But because this is a vikatal form with the vav at the beginning, the stress is going to shift to the end. So if you look at Genesis 1:29, for instance, the first common singular suffix conjugation in the call of nun tav nun, natati, natati, with the stress on the penultimate accent. Genesis 3:10, the familiar verb shin mem ayin, shamati, shamati. Genesis 4:1, kuf nun he, or kuf nun yud, technically, kaniti, kaniti. Genesis 4:9, Yadati, Yadati. Even in Amos 3:2, we have Yadati, penultimate stress. Natati and Manati in Amos 4:6. You get the idea. But when we add the vav to this suffix conjugation form, the stress will shift to the ultima, that is to say the final syllable, as in Visacharti. Or Genesis 13:16, Visamti. Or in Genesis 17:8, Vinatati. And this regularly happens in Amos as well. Amos 1:5, as we've seen already, Vishavarti. Amos 3:14, Ufakadti, Ufakadti. Amos 7:9, Vikamti. Amos 8:10, Vihafachti. And so on. Now, regarding the vikatalti form, or the inverted perfect, as Masorah calls it, as you can see here, with waw inversive of the perfect, the milel stress, that is to say, the penultimate stress, the stress on the second to last syllable, tends to change to milra, that is to the ultima, to the final syllable. But in many cases, this tendency is not realized. And examples are given here. So going back to Amos 1:5, Vishavarti means and I will break. B'riach damesek is a construct phrase. B'riach is the masculine singular construct, meaning the bar of. So the bar of Damascus. And then we have another vikatalti form, v'hechrati, and I will cut off. This is from the root kaf, resh, tav, v'hechrati, because the root ends in tav, and the suffix begins in tav, we have a doubling dagesh. So, and I will cut off, yoshev mibikat aven. Now, This is an interesting term. Yoshev is a kal masculine singular participle of the root yud shin bet, and it could mean inhabitant. That's a perfectly sensible interpretation. But given the fact that this term appears in context with v'tomech shevet, the holder of the scepter, it is quite possible to take Yoshev, which literally means sitter, as the king. An argument has been made for both interpretations, either king or just the common inhabitant. So I will cut off the Yoshev, however you choose to take that, from Bikat Avin, and the holder of the scepter, or the scepter holder, notice the article is conspicuously absent there, where we would expect it on Shevet, Mebeit Eden, from Beit Eden. Vigalu, here again we have a vikatal form with the stress shifted to the end. It is milra stress, or stress on the ultima, the final syllable, third masculine plural call. And they will be exiled. Who will be exiled? Am Aram. Now notice that Am Aram, Am is technically a singular as the subject of the sentence, but we have a plural verb, and that is because Am is plural in sense, even though it is not plural in form. Vigalu Am Aram, the people of Aram, which is Syria, will be exiled, and then notice we have Kira, the unaccented hey at the end, or the unaccented ah at the end, is the locative ah, or as it's often called in the grammars, the locative hey, and it means to Kir. They will be exiled to Kir, and then Amar Adonai, the Lord has said. The Lord has said. Okay, now, when we read the text before, you may have noticed that there's a certain rhythm to this verse, as we've seen in previous verses. So we have Vishavarti b'riach damesek, v'hechati yoshev mipekat aven, v'tomech shevet mibet eden, v'galu am aram kira amar Adonai. So the rhythm is not as tight as it is in the previous verses, but nevertheless, we have clauses of 3 to 4 words. So the first one, Vishavarti b'riach damesek, notice that clause has a very familiar accent pattern. The clause ends on the zakef katan. It is preceded by a munach, and the munach is preceded by pashta. So we've seen this pattern of pashta, munach, zakef katan previously in Amos. We see it in Amos 1:1 on Ben Yoash Melech Israel. We've seen it in verse 2 on Adonai Mitzion Yeshag and on Ve'avelu Neot HaRoim. Verse 3, Shlosha Pishei Damesek. And here in verse 5, Vishavarti B'riach Damesek. And it'll show up in verse 6 as well, Shlosha Pishei Azah. And the pattern that we find in the next clause, in V'hechati Yoshev Mibikat Aven, we have the Mehupach on V'hechati. We have the Pashta on Yoshev, and Bikat Aven has the Zakef Katan. Notice that the form Mibikat does not have a stress of its own or a cantillation mark of its own, because it is attached to Aven with the Makef. Next, we have a familiar pattern on V'tomech shevet mebeit Eden. So in Amos 1:4, we saw the Mercha, Tifcha, Munach, Zakef Katan. And that also shows up here in verse 5 as well, V'tomech shevet mebeit Eden. We're going to see it in verse 7, verse 10. And it's very common in Genesis too, as you can see in Genesis 1:2, on the final line on the page, Vayomer Elohim, Yehi Or. Verse 6, Yehi Rakia B'tor Hamayim. Verse 10, Ulemikvei Hamayim Kara Yamim, etc. So it's a very common pattern that we find here in Amos. Now the pattern Darga Tvir Tifcha, this is the first time we've seen this in Amos. The Darga accent is not quite as common, but we'll see it again in Amos 1:15. Notice that in both of these cases, that pattern appears before the siluk, the final accent. Amos 3:1. It shows up twice, once before the Atnach on Yisrael, once before the Siluk, Lemor. And it shows up again at Amos 3:7, so it's common enough. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, to click the bell below so that you'll be notified when videos like this appear in the future, and please be sure to share this video on social media. I really appreciate the support. See you next time.